The photos that came back at 3 a.m. Scary story. This footage was reconstructed from a smartphone recovered by the Seattle Police Department. It belonged to a 32-year-old man named David, who disappeared without a trace last November. The police found no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no struggle, but they did find his phone, lying face down on the living room floor. And inside its gallery, they found a sequence of 5 photographs. The first photo is simple, but deeply unsettling. It shows a grainy, dark view from a first-floor living room, looking up a narrow wooden staircase. David had explicitly deleted this photo on a Tuesday. He even emptied his recently deleted folder, wiping it from the local storage completely. But the system logs showed that the next day, at exactly 3 a.m., the photo restored itself. The most terrifying part is not the software glitch. It is the fact that when this photo was taken, David was fast asleep in his bedroom on the 2nd floor. Someone, or something, used his phone to take that picture. What follows is the disturbing 5-day log of David's final week, pieced together from the metadata left behind. David had just moved to a secluded 2-story house on the outskirts of Seattle. He was a freelance illustrator who needed absolute isolation to meet a grueling deadline. But that isolation quickly turned into a perfect, inescapable trap. The nightmare began on a Tuesday morning. At 8 a.m., David was brewing coffee and casually scrolling through his smartphone's gallery app. He was looking for some reference images he had saved the night before. But at the very top of his recent photos, a strange thumbnail caught his eye. It was a pitch-black image covered in heavy digital noise. The file name was img_0941.jpg. He tapped it to view it in full screen. The location in the photo was his own house. It was a shot taken from the center of his first-floor living room, pointing up the old wooden stairs. The focus was completely blurred, taken in the dark without a flash. David slowly set his coffee mug down on the counter. He swiped up on the screen to check the image's metadata and timestamp. Taken today at 3 a.m. David frowned, a cold knot forming in his stomach. At 3 a.m., he was deeply asleep in his 2nd-floor bedroom. He had never sleepwalked a day in his life, and the idea of an intruder made no sense. His front door was double-locked from the inside, and nothing in the house was missing or out of place. "It's just a pocket dial," he whispered to the empty kitchen. "The phone must have been in my hand when I came down for water, and the shutter went off by accident." Trying to shake off the creeping unease, he tapped the trash can icon. Delete photo. To be absolutely certain, he navigated to the recently deleted folder and hit delete all. The photo was permanently wiped from the device. Or so he thought. Wednesday morning. David woke up to the sound of heavy Seattle rain pounding against his bedroom window. He rolled over in bed, unplugged his smartphone from the charger, and opened his gallery. His heart immediately sank. Sitting at the very top of the grid, the exact same photo of the dark staircase, img_0941.jpg, was back. David sat up straight, his breath catching in his throat. Is this an iCloud syncing bug? He frantically opened his settings app. But his cloud photo backup was toggled off. The photo hadn't downloaded from a server. It had resurrected itself from the phone's local storage. But that wasn't the real horror. Right next to the restored staircase photo, there was a brand new image. img_0942.jpg. David's fingers trembled as he tapped the second photo. The location had changed. It was taken from the 2nd-floor hallway. The camera was positioned at the top of the stairs, looking directly at David's slightly open bedroom door. Through the narrow crack of the door, the dark foot of his bed was barely visible. He swiped up to check the timestamp. Taken today at 3:01 a.m. David couldn't breathe. Someone had stood at the bottom of the stairs at 3 a.m. And 1 minute later, at 3:01 a.m., they had walked up to the second floor and stood right outside his door, taking pictures, documenting their approach. David grabbed a heavy metal flashlight and searched the entire house like a madman. He checked every closet, looked under the bed, inspected the basement, and verified every window lock. Nothing. The house was entirely empty. The alarm system hadn't been triggered once. The only proof that someone was inside his home was the digital gallery on his phone. Thursday night. David refused to sleep. He left every single light in the house turned on. He sat on the living room couch with a baseball bat resting across his knees. His smartphone was sitting face up on the coffee table right in front of him. He was determined to stay awake and watch the clock hit 3 a.m. If he was awake, he could catch whoever, or whatever, was doing this. 2:15 a.m. 2:40 a.m. The digital numbers on the microwave clock changed with agonizing slowness. But severe stress and a growing sleep debt were destroying his focus. At 2:55 a.m., David's head slumped forward. He fought it, violently shaking his head, but his consciousness was dragged down into a heavy, unnatural darkness. It felt less like falling asleep and more like being forcibly shut down. Friday morning, 7 a.m. David jolted awake on the couch, gasping for air as if he had been drowning. No. He lunged forward and snatched his smartphone off the coffee table. His hands were shaking so badly that the facial recognition failed twice. He punched in his passcode and opened the gallery. All the blood drained from his face. There were now 3 photos lined up in a row. IMG_0941.jpg, the stairs. IMG_0942.jpg, the hallway. And a newly generated third photo. IMG_0943.jpg. David held his breath and opened it. The photo was taken from inside his bedroom. The camera was positioned at the foot of the bed, pointing toward the pillows. In the photo, sticking out from under the heavy blankets, was a pale, bare foot. But it wasn't David's foot. David had spent the entire night passed out on the living room couch downstairs. Which meant, while he was asleep on the first floor, something had entered his second-floor bedroom. It had crawled into his empty bed, pulled the covers over itself, and taken a picture of its own foot. Timestamp, 3:02 a.m. David felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He ran to the kitchen sink and threw up. He wanted to smash the phone with a hammer. But a sudden, desperate curiosity forced him to look deeper. He opened the EXIF metadata for the third photo. Digital photos store hidden information about how and when an image was captured. Camera model, iPhone 15 Pro. It matched his device perfectly. But the lens data was wrong. Lens, front-facing camera. The selfie camera. David's mind went completely blank. The photo wasn't taken with the rear lens. Whatever was lying in his bed had placed the smartphone on its chest and used the front camera to take a picture of the end of the bed. David quickly checked the EXIF data for the first 2 photos. They both said front-facing camera. That meant nobody was holding the phone up and looking at the screen to take these pictures. The camera was pointed backward, like someone holding the phone tightly against their chest, walking blindly in the dark. Friday afternoon. David decided to fight back with technology. He drove to a local electronics store and bought 3 motion-activated home security cameras. He mounted one pointing at the living room stairs, one in the second-floor hallway, and one directly inside his bedroom, pointing at the bed. "If you are physical, you will be recorded," he muttered to himself. That night, he set his smartphone on the bedroom vanity, leaning it against the mirror so the rear camera faced the bed. He pressed record on a video app, capturing the entire room. Then, he went downstairs, locked himself in the living room, and sat on the couch to wait. Saturday morning. David survived the night. The sun was just beginning to rise over the dreary Seattle skyline. He immediately opened his laptop and checked the motion-activated security cameras. Stairs camera. Nothing. Hallway camera. Nothing. Bedroom camera. Nothing. Not a single frame of motion was detected. No shadows, no glitches, no movement. The house had been completely dead all night. Breathing a massive sigh of relief, David walked upstairs to his bedroom. His smartphone was still sitting on the vanity. The battery was at 12%. The video recording had automatically stopped around 6 a.m. when the storage maxed out. He opened the gallery. The massive 7-hour video file was there. He scrubbed through the timeline at 8x speed. Nothing happened. The bed remained empty. "It's over," he whispered, wiping sweat from his forehead. But then, he backed out to the main gallery view. And his heart stopped beating. Right next to the 7-hour video file, there was a brand new, 4th photo. img_0944.jpg. Timestamp, 3:03 a.m. David's fingers went completely numb. How could a photo be taken while the phone was actively recording a video? He slowly tapped the image. It was a terrifyingly close macro shot, taken in absolute darkness with heavy digital noise. It was so close that only a patch of skin, some hair, and a dark collar were visible. But David recognized the collar of his own shirt and the curve of his own neck. It was a picture of the back of his head, taken from less than 4 inches away. But David had been sleeping on the couch downstairs, and the smartphone had been recording video upstairs in the bedroom. Where was this taken? David stared at the dark, blurry background behind his neck in the photo. It was the fabric of his living room couch. Something had stood directly behind him while he slept downstairs, hovering inches away from his neck. David frantically opened the EXIF metadata. Timestamp, 3:03 a.m. The exact minute he had closed his eyes from exhaustion on the couch. He scrolled down to the device information. It didn't say iPhone 15 Pro. It displayed a chilling system log. Device, unknown device. And below that, the name of the device connected to his local network. Device name, bedroom camera. David couldn't breathe. He hadn't named any of the new security cameras bedroom camera. They were still on their default factory names, which meant the unseen intruder wasn't a person holding his phone. The intruder itself was recognized by the network as a camera, an invisible device hovering inches from his neck, syncing photos directly into his personal gallery. That was the last